A recap of the June 17th divorce care session, where Lakewood member and financial advisor Ed Hill joined us to share his pearls of financial wisdom. Enjoy.
A privilege to be able to share with you all tonight. I'm going to give you just a real quick background on myself so you have some kind of a feel for who you're talking to. From a professional standpoint, as Shatera mentioned, I've been in the financial services industry for decades. The last 11 years has been focused as an investment advisor or financial advisor. And I actually love what I do. It's a blessing to be able to help people, and it is something I greatly look forward to doing every day. Um, so I have a Series 6 for those of you who know what this means. I have a Series 6 and a 65. And I help people with retirement planning. I help people with investments from all different types, any type of securities, life insurance, annuities, all of that. And I have the heart of a teacher, not a salesperson. So I like to encourage people, share with people. My goal with every client is to talk about different options that they have to arrive at whatever destination they want to get to. And then they can take those options. I'll give them pros and cons for each one. They can think about it, pray about it, follow peace, then let me know what direction they want to go. Okay. I'm also divorced. I was after, well, I guess it was 35 years of marriage. We separated, and 4 days before our 36th wedding anniversary, we were divorced, and that was in 2018. So I have a heart for each of you that are on this call and what you're walking through right now. I will tell you it gets better. We just take it a step at a time. It gets better. But I will tell you this, from the time about 4 months after we separated, I reached a point where I had to absolutely surrender everything to God. All of my emotions, all of my anger, all of my frustrations, the unforgiveness. I had to surrender all of it to Him because I was becoming something that I was becoming a person I didn't know. And He completely turned my life at that point. And there has been a hunger for God in the last 7 years, unlike anything I've ever had before. And I've been saved over 40 some odd years. So I'm somewhat embarrassed to tell you that. But that desperation has led me to a closer place with Him than we've ever had. And so, from the spiritual to the professional. So, let's go to the trust versus will. Okay. Um, Three people whose names are very familiar: John Wayne, Prince, and Aretha Franklin. All three of them died without a will. John Wayne's estate was worth $50 million. Prince's estate was worth 150 million, and Aretha's estate was worth 80 million.
Mm.
And when you pass without a will and your assets are like that, there's three things that happen no matter how many assets you have. The first thing is the state comes in and they probate the will. Okay. And the state will charge your estate between 6 and 10% for them to do it. So Prince is from the state of Minnesota. So the state of Minnesota walked away with 15 million of his dollars to probate the will. Okay. So second point, when that situation occurs, no one gets a dime until it's settled. And that's not weeks, that's not months. In these situations, it was years. And so no family members got a dime until everything was settled. And then the last thing, which is to me the most egregious, when they reach a settlement, they put it out there and make it a matter of public record. So every vulture known to man is going to come sending you emails or mail, filling your mailbox because they know you just got a settlement. And so those are the things that occur when you die without a will. John Wayne, Prince, Aretha Franklin, they're in, I don't know, who knows, maybe somebody on the phone is in one of those $1 million levels there. But if you are, please get a will or a trust put together as soon as possible. Okay. So pretty much the difference is I'm not an attorney, So, an attorney can give you better information than I can, or more detailed information. But basically, a will, you're leaving your wishes for your heirs to handle your assets in the way that you want them handled. That's what a will does. A trust does the same thing, but a will can be contested. Anybody can contest a will, and they don't have to have standing. Okay. So, Pookie and them from around the corner might decide, oh, I think we should get a little something, something. So they're going to contest the will.
Mm.
Now, I have heard, and my understanding is currently wills have some language in them now. And the language says if you contest the will, you will be excluded from it. Okay. So they're putting that language in wills nowadays, but I don't believe that language has been tested in court yet.
Mm.
Okay. So it's better to have a will than to not have a will. Um, but a will can be contested, whereas a trust is very difficult to contest. Now, let me go back to wills real quick. You can go online and find, a will that can be done. Some service that'll do a will for free or for $100 or something like that. I don't recommend you head down that path, because the reason that they're not charging you for it is because they're going to take your information and sell it to people.
Mm.
And your inbox and your mailbox is going to get loaded up with stuff that you really don't want to see. Okay. If you go to an attorney, it's going to cost between $750 to $1,500 to get a will. I don't know how much a trust costs. I looked into a trust about 10 years ago, and at that time, a trust was like $2,500 10 years ago. So my guess is it's probably going to be in the $5,000 range to get a trust. You want to go to an attorney, preferably an estate attorney, and have it amended. And you bring up a good point. If you do have a will, it's a living, breathing document. So it needs to get updated like about every 5 years. You want to update it because there could be changes in your life. There could be people you want to add. There may be somebody you may want to adjust what you initially had there. Okay. But it's a living, breathing document. And the other thing too is you want to make sure that your beneficiaries are updated with who you want them to be. That is something that is very easily forgotten and overlooked. Okay, so you definitely want to find an attorney, an estate planning attorney, and they should be able to get that taken care of for you. You don't have to go back to the person who originally did it.
And then you may also consider looking at your employee assistance programs. Sometimes, especially during open enrollment, you can sign up for legal services and look at what they offer. Because so, for example, for me, with the company I work for, I pay a nominal fee, but I don't have to pay my attorney, right? For certain things. At the company I worked for before, I pay a nominal fee and then I get the services at a discount. So maybe I get a 25% off discount when I needed to have a document um, created. So look there also to help with cost savings.
So let me share with you when it comes to a trust. A trust is significantly more expensive than a will. However, I normally recommend people pursue a trust if there are two things going on in your life. One, if you have enough assets where there will be a feeding frenzy when you're gone, get a trust versus a will. Now you might say, well, Ed, how am I going to know if there's enough assets for that? You know, I'm going to try to say this as kindly as I can. Sometimes we don't really know what's in the heart of someone until there's money on the table. It brings things out of people that you may not even have known was there if there's a little money on the table. And so it's best you're doing your family, being a blessing to your family by having everything allocated in such a way that it gets done the way you want it done. So if there are substantial enough assets where there's going to be a feeding frenzy, then get a trust. It would be something that'll be a blessing 10 times over for you and for your heirs. The other scenario where I recommend people get a trust is probably a scenario that each of y'all are very familiar with. If you have someone in your life whose name begins with X, ex-wife, ex-husband, ex whatever, you you may want to look strongly at getting a trust because you could have a situation where you have children together and there's children that you all have together and there's other children, there's children you may have bought to the union, there's children they may have bought to the union, there may be children in the current union after that union is over. So there's so many different moving pieces. If you have a blended family, you really want to look at getting a trust because you just want to make sure that all of your children are taken care of. No, no, it's just a matter. I will tell you, in my family, when my mother passed, there was a niece who felt like she should have gotten something, and the number it was a four-figure number that it wound up creating drama
Mm.
over a four-figure number, not a six-figure, not a five, a four-figure number. And I won't tell you the first number, but it wasn't very large. It's more, it's not as much about the amount as it is about the relationship and how someone may look and see, looking at the exact same thing you're looking at and see it thoroughly different.
Mhm.
Okay. And feel like there's something that they're owed when there really isn't. And so that's why I say that it's not about the amount. When someone's passed and someone feels like they should get something that that you may not think they should get, but because your wishes aren't locked down, now they have a louder voice.
Can I, if I may, just to
Please.
kind of give a couple of examples. So, there's a gentleman that shared that when his wife's mother passed, someone just that he doesn't know if it was a neighbor or a long distance family member, someone came to the house and said, she promised me I could have her stove.
Mm,
And he was like, she just died this morning.
mm,
Like so you may not think that anything is anything.
mm,
However, you need to think not like you, but like the most irrational person you maybe know, right? And like how it said, if you have a will, anyone can lay claim to it and say, he told me I could have this. And if they have enough money to contest it, or they have enough to contest it, now you are in the throes. Or, second scenario, a gentleman, he passed, at the time he passed, he had a wife. His ex-wife was a beneficiary on his pension,
oh,
and the ex-wife collected the pension. The children that were her, like the ex-wife's children with the man that passed, were like, Mom, you know this isn't right. He's been married to so and so for the last 20 years. Like, what are you doing? And they said, you know it's not right. And she said, that's his fault that he didn't take my name off of it. So again,
mm,
you just want to make sure that you have expressly carved out everything you need to carve out, whether it's if you kept your wedding ring because you wanted to be for your son, you need to put that in your trust that says who gets that, right? If you have a home that you bought post divorce and you have minor children, they can't sign for that. And so then they are minors, and whoever their guardian is, which will usually be the ex-spouse, gets control over that until they are of age. If you don't like that scenario, you need to make sure you document who should be over the finances, who should, and then that's why you're working with the attorney, like Ed said, because they kind of help you navigate and ask the right questions so you know how detailed you need to be, all the way down to the car you own, all the way down to if you have a trust set aside for your children, who can go in and get money and for what reason and when can they get all of the money. Like, you just want to make sure you leave as much ambiguity out of it so that then you don't have anyone upset or the wrong people left out because we didn't expressly state it.
That's your choice on who you want to have as a trustee. You can name someone that you trust. That someone that you trust. You can name an attorney. You have a lot of different options there. No.
It's with people with any kind of assets. Like, you may be in an apartment, but you have a car, and you want to make sure that car goes to your child. You may have a mink coat, and you want to make sure that mink coat goes to your daughter, not to your stepdaughter, not to your cousin. Like, if you just look around and survey your house and say, I don't care who this couch goes to, but I do care who this and this and this and this and this goes to.
Your retirement dollars are you normally designate a beneficiary for your retirement dollars. Okay. So you just want to make sure that that beneficiary is updated. But you normally you're going to name a beneficiary for your retirement, so that should be okay. But there are other investments you may have that may not have a beneficiary associated with them. And so if there's no beneficiary indicated, then you want to make sure that's included in the trust. You're getting a little bit deep in the weeds there. I'm going to defer that to an attorney on how you would do that. But one of the things I have no trouble saying is if I don't know, I have no trouble telling you that. Okay.
If I can interject, for my own divorce, I couldn't legally do anything, change anything until I had divorce paperwork completed, like a decree. And part of that is just because you could be moving things, changing things, and it could look very copious, right? And so you have to wait till like the dust is settled. But I will say this, for the trust that I created after my divorce, I did name my best friend as my executor. And I put a nominal fee in there for things that were going to be timely. Like, so for example, if she had to navigate, and this was my attorney helped me understand all of that, which is why Ed is saying talk to your attorney. So my attorney, I was like, well, because it's in the document, like, do you want to pay? So he asked, do you want to pay them? Because it's going to come out of your monies. And I'm like, pay them for what? And he was able to kind of explain to me, if your daughter is 10 and she is going to have to kind of oversee this trust for the next 18 years until she comes of age, you may want to pay her like a nominal fee for her time, and you can decide what that nominal fee is. However, if you get an attorney, they're going to charge you a fee per hour fee, right? And so again, your attorney will walk you through all of those different caveats, because everybody's situation is different. You may not want to leave your friend in charge of it. You may want to put an attorney in, like, it's up to you, but let your attorney kind of walk you through it. Consult your current attorney through your divorce, but typically you have to wait until your divorce is finalized and you have a divorce decree. Because if you start
Okay.
changing things on accounts and things like that now, it can be looked unfavorable if you have to go to court. It looks like you're trying to hide, you know what I mean? So I would definitely talk to your attorney for your divorce that says, can I change this now? And usually they'll give you the guidance. I remember for me, the guidance was wait until everything, and even in the book, it's wait until everything is finalized so that you don't have to explain yourself.
Right. And you've got to take that to an attorney and
Yeah,
walk through
because
that. Yeah.
you have to keep in mind, like, you're in a community property state, so your will may not account for what you guys maybe amassed together, or what you even earned while you were in, you know what I mean? So all of that gets commingled, and you need to talk with your attorney about,
Hmm.
what do I do about my will, and does it still stay in, and all of that, to make sure you're not again negatively impacting your case.
So let's go on to the next topic. The next topic is tackling debt. Okay. And so the first point I wanted to make is debt is often a function of lifestyle. Not always, but it's often a function of lifestyle. And before we can tackle debt, I love football, and it's all about blocking and tackling. And when you tackle somebody, you're looking to see where that person's going so you can meet them there and take them down. And if you look at debt that way, you've got to look at what led to the debt service, what led to getting there. Okay. Um, I can tell you from a personal standpoint, for about 4 or 5 years in my marriage, I traveled 100% of the time, leaving on Mondays, coming home on Fridays, sometimes coming home the following Friday. I was traveling all the time. And so when I would come in on a Friday night, I would take my now ex and we'd go get a bite to eat. Okay. Saturday, my children were adults. So the only way I could get them, I had to feed them. So we'd all get together Saturday and I'd go get something to eat. And then on Sunday, we go to Lakewood on Sunday. And then I don't know how long some of you have been going to Lakewood, but down the street from Lakewood, there used to be a Pappadeaux's. And that Pappadeaux's had this amazing brunch. Now, it's not there anymore, but we go get brunch on Sunday. And I was not even thinking about how much money I was spending. I was just having time with my family. And I'd be on this one time after a weekend, I'm on the plane heading back to California. And I got to thinking, Friday night, that was 70 something. Saturday, it was 100. You just spent 400. And I'm sitting on a plane and the reality hit and I freaked. You just spent $400. Then I got, okay, annualized. Oh my God, you think your last name's Rockefeller? What are you doing? And so I was beating myself up. And from that point on, I was like, oh, we got to change this. But it took that eye opening revelation for me to realize what I was actually doing. And it wasn't like I was trying to spend money. It was just, I don't know, I'm an amiable type of spender. I spend money to spend time with those that I love. And I was creating a mess.
Mm.
And so we've got to understand what leads us to that debt service if we're going to tackle it. Okay. And so what I encourage you to do is prayerfully consider what led to the debt service. Now, we can't, and one of the challenges I had, hopefully y'all don't have this challenge, but one of the challenges I had is I blamed my ex for pretty much everything. Okay. Not some things, not a few things, everything. And it took a long time for me to realize the more I'm blaming her, the more I'm blaming. I'm not dealing with my own issues. I'm not dealing with what I did to make this thing happen. And so it took part of the debt component for me was realizing what I did to make this happen. And then believe in God for the courage, the strength, and the discipline necessary to change and to be better. Okay. Because he's blessed us with whatever we have, but we're stewards. What we have isn't ours, it's his. And we're stewards over it. And if we want to be in a situation to manage more of his increase, we've got to honor him with what we have. And so I want to encourage you. One, look at what created your debt, okay? And then identify what led to that, and then believe God for the strength, the courage, and the discipline to make the changes so that that debt number doesn't continue to increase. And then the next thing that I use the term shut the front door, okay? Because like when it comes to credit cards, what we share in the financial ministry is to get away from using credit cards. Okay, stop spending tomorrow to take care of today. Okay, and so in order to stop and to get out of that credit card cycle, you've got to stop charging. We can come up with all kinds of ways to take care of debt, all kinds of ways to reduce debt, all kinds of ways to lower that number. But if you're still putting that plastic down, you ain't going anywhere. It's like being on a hamster wheel. We've got to get to the point where we shut that front door. For me, I had to stop charging. I had to stop coming home and spending multiple dollars taking everybody out in order to get time with them. I had to find another way to do that. That was shutting the front door for me. For you, it may be something different. Okay. The next note, you'll see debt snowball down there. I don't know if any of you have been through a Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University class, but Dave talks about a debt snowball. And what that basically is you're making a list of all of your debts and you sort them from the smallest to the largest. And these are all of your debts, excluding your mortgage. Sort them from the smallest to the largest. Okay. And what you want to do is make minimum payments on everything except the first one. So say that first one you're paying, I don't know, say $50 to NTB or something. No, but $50 to NTB. So, and you got a $200 balance. Well, you want to get NTB paid off as fast as possible. And then once you get NTB paid off, you take that $50 and apply it to the next one. Okay. So, and then you continue to do that. As you pay them off, you take what you were paying previously and take and apply it to the next one so that you are getting these debts paid off as quick as physically possible. And then at a certain point, when you get to the point of paying them all off, you may have been finding that you were spending $3,000 a month paying off debt. Well, I'm throwing out a number three, could be 1,500, could be 1,000. Hopefully it's not higher than three, but you're spending that amount of money a month, and now you're using it to attack one debt after another. And once that debt is taken care of, you still have that $3,000 a month, and it changes from your debt snowball to your investment snowball. Now, instead of paying off debt, you're paying yourself. And compound interest is working for you instead of working against you. Well, I would share with you first, without knowing your situation at all, I would share with you first, examine areas where, because the only way to reduce, you've got two options: reduce your expenses or increase your income. Mm-hmm. Those are the only two options you have. And maybe you can look at your expenses and see if there's anything you can do. I don't know if there's a Starbucks trip that you're making a couple of times a week, or eating out versus taking your lunch with you. Making some casseroles. I had a friend of mine who went through divorce. She had two teenage sons. And for any of y'all that have teenage sons, you know that those are bottomless pits. They are never full. It's just something about teenage boys. They're always hungry. Okay. And she wound up marrying a gentleman with two other teenage sons. So she had four teenagers in the house that she had to feed. And she was telling me it was like a car payment a week to try and feed all them crumb snatchers. And so, you know, but she had gotten to the point where she was making casseroles. And the casserole may make it the whole night. It may not make it all night. but she had gotten to the point where she was making casseroles. I would encourage you to do whatever you can to try and reduce your expenses, however you can do it. Um, and in most instances, we can look at places and see an area where we can kind of reduce some expenses and utilize, and you may have to reduce those expenses and utilize them for somewhere else because there's not enough.
Mhm.
So whatever you've got to do to get through this stage until you're able to either have an increase in income or you're able to address those expenses and reduce them as much as you can. I would make that the absolute last resort. If you're not able to make something happen, make it the absolute last resort.
Mhm.
Um, because that situation is one where, well, and I mean, and there may be a value proposition there. If you're able to get the loan, it's going to be a high interest rate, but the interest rate may not be as high as the interest rate the credit cards are charging you because of, the way of the status of your accounts. You've just got to look at that and see if there's a way to address that. That would be an option. It is an option. It's just normally not one that I would recommend. The main thing that I would encourage you to do is just stay on your face. Okay? Just stay on your face because we've got some promises and we can do what we can do in the natural, but we never want to forget the spiritual.
Mhm.
We've got some promises that have been made to us as children of the Most High God, and sometimes our situation seems like impossible.
Mhm.
And if we look at the Word of God, and it's like, how are there's so many times where I've looked at the Word and been like, Lord, I ain't even anywhere near this.
Mhm.
Your Word says this, and I'm way down here. And so it's a matter of taking him at his word, trusting him at his word, doing everything we know to do. But let's not forget the spiritual because we've got a heavenly Father who wants to intervene in this situation.
Two things that kind of came into my spirit while we were talking about this is the widow in Second Kings. What do you
Mm-hmm.
have in your house? Right. And so there was one lady that thought, we're about to die in this famine. I'm gonna make this, and then I'm gonna just me and my son are gonna die. And when Elijah came and said, well, wait, feed me first, right? She took the little bit that she had and her faithfulness in taking that little bit, right? um, is how God was able to continue to give her enough to supply all of her and her son's need until the famine was over. And then same Second Kings, the other widow whose two sons were going to get taken to pay off the
Mm-hmm.
debt, which I think resonates with me and us talking about debt. And he said, well, what do you have in your house? And she said, it's got a little bit of oil. And he said, well, then go get as many vessels as you can. So when I hear it say, stay on your face, stay praying, stay asking God for clarity and discernment, not only to tell you where maybe our spending habits need to shift, but also what's in my house. I know one young lady here, when she first separated and there was no income coming from, no support coming from the father, they started, she would take her two sons and they would get in the car and she started doing DoorDash. And they ended up turning that into a ministry because they would pick up food and they would see a homeless person and they would hand that food out, and that blessed her spirit. So back to what Ed was saying earlier, when he started, is how can you serve others? So what talents do you have, right? Like, I don't know if you can tutor someone or if you can babysit, or like there's a plethora of, there are clothes that gently used that you can go and take to the Plato's closet. Like there are different things that God may reveal to you in that prayer time that will, you think, well, what could that $5 or $10 do? The same thing that a little bit of oil can do when you're pouring, but with the supernatural pouring behind you, that gap, like Ed just showed the gap, right? That gap can be absorbed supernaturally better than we could ever, right? So
Absolutely.
that's the first thing, like making sure you are understanding your prayer walk. But the other thing is making sure we're tithing. I know that tithing is the last thing we think about when we are in dire straits, but all throughout the Bible, we look at people who gave the last that they had, like the young lady that came and the wealthy people were putting all their money in, and she came and put her 2 cents in, and he goes, that woman's faith is stronger than the faith of all these riches that these people are putting in. Or we look at, she poured the perfume. It was the last of her perfume, and she poured it all over Jesus. And they were admonishing her, saying, "You could have sold that in the
Yeah.
market." And he said, "Wait a minute," right? So we want to just make sure, even though it may seem like, God, if I tithe, I'm not going to have enough. Well, if you don't, you will guarantee not have his enough, right? And that's not the threat. It's just he needs to know your faithfulness to him, that when you give the 10% to him, all these things will be added unto us, right? And that can be hard. I know it. It can be hard in the face of not enough to give some away, but you're not giving it away. You're sowing seed, expecting the harvest. A special thank you to Ed for joining us, and we will have you back soon for part 2 of this great financial discussion. Please note there will be no session next week. See you on July 1st.